Welcome to Steward Leaders, a podcast for leaders who understand that our leadership is not about us. I'm Eric Alexander. In these conversations, we explore what it means to lead as stewards, living our leadership for something bigger than ourselves. Listeners, thanks for joining us today, and hello to you as well, Ash Noah. I'm so grateful you've made time for a Steward Leaders conversation.
Thank you very much, Eric. It is an honor and a delight to be on this podcast with you, and I'm really looking forward to this dialogue.
Me too. Honor and delight, they are mine. I've been delighted to find you and get to have conversation with you. We've not met in person, but listeners, you're going to love what Ash has to share today. We're planning to have two conversations, and let me tell you a little bit about him. I'll let him expand on his bio as well, but Ash is the Vice President, Managing Director of Learning, Education, and Development at the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, AICPA. He's a former CFO. He's got lots of professional certifications, including one we share, both being certified public accountants. He's an avid aviator, and I discovered he lives not far from one of my sons and his family. And back a couple months ago, when I was heading out there to meet a new grandbaby, he was gracious to invite me to come see him. And I said, "This sounds fun, Ash. The grandbaby takes priority. Maybe another trip."
Absolutely, you being a good steward of your time with your family, so that's absolutely spot on. Eric, I've lived and worked in several parts of the world. I'm a practitioner around finance through and through. I must admit, I did start out life as an auditor. But I
Me
only
too.
lasted 6 months.
Mine lasted 3 years.
And I quickly moved to the world of logistics in a company called TNT, and started off at the very bottom as a billing accountant, and then eventually ended up in about 25 years with the company, and a journey through many ups and downs, many challenges, especially around playing the role of the steward and making some hard decisions, and then finally finding a home with the AICPA, where we set the standards
Yes.
of trust and ethics and stewardship, and I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of this organization that promotes stewardship and the professionalism and ethics forefront. So I'm absolutely honored to be a part of the profession, represent the profession, and also be able to speak for the profession.
Well, having you on here is very special. Let me tell the listeners how I found you. First of all, I want to explain, there's a document I found that I think came out a little over 10 years ago, put out by the AICPA and the CIMA, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. I believe that's a British organization, correct? And the document was Global Management Accounting Principles, GMAP. And there was a first version that came out 10, 12 years ago. I forget how I discovered it, but when I did, it resonated with me, having lived in that world. And now in my coaching and mentoring, leadership development, working with other leaders in that world. And one of the things that struck me, first principles, foundational principles we never want to lose sight of. We can get so caught up in the operational, the tactical, but it takes us back to the first principles in a way very similar to what I statement of financial accounting concepts that provided the intellectual underpinnings for generally accepted accounting principles here in the U.S. When I found the GMAP, and especially when I started to digest it and encountered stewardship, I thought, ooh, I need to find somebody who helped put this document together. And so I started poking around, talking with people in London. One person led to another, who led to another, and finally somebody said, you need to talk to Ash. Ash helped come up with a revision that came out a couple of years ago. He knows this document well. More importantly, he believes and lives these values. And so let me just stop right there and let you talk some about, one more thing. This resonated with me so strongly that as I was putting my book together, book comes out in a couple months. Stewardship, Leadership for Stinking Accountants, about serving as the CFO. I've got some quotes in there. I'm focusing on stewardship. Principles talked about stewardship. It resonated with me, and I pulled some of that content into the book. Why the stewardship role is right at the heart of what it means to be a finance leader. That's a long
Yeah.
ramble to get you set up.
No, that's absolutely valid, and it helps me launch into the discussion about starting with first principles, like you said, purpose. If we think about the purpose of the finance function, and we think about the purpose of a CFO and a finance leader, there are two fundamental purposes that a CFO and the finance office serves to a business. One is around business guidance, and the other is business governance. And both guidance and the governance, both of those aspects are deeply rooted in stewardship,
Yes.
trust, and ethics. Um, the guidance, the business guidance is around business decision making,
Yes.
and it is guidance around what are the right decisions to be made. And those decisions are not just about the what is best for the business. It's about what is best for the purpose of why that business exists. And
Yes.
it involves many stakeholders, including your customers, including your suppliers. And so decisions are made for the in the best interests of the stakeholders. And finance brings a perspective on those decisions which is independent. So there's a sense of independence that finance brings in, for which business looks towards finance. And so that's kind of where we really wear our management accounting hat in terms of value creation, in terms of making the best decisions, using information that is most relevant, analyzing that information where we actually provide insights that help in communicating and influencing to make the right decision, to create the right impact,
Yes.
and generate value, but in a manner which builds trust. And that is really the key aspect of these four principles. The four principles being information is relevant, analysis that actually generates insights for value, the communication from that insight which influences, creates the right impact through the right decisions, and through a stewardship that manages relationships, manages the various stakeholders that I mentioned in order to build trust. And so the four principles of management accounting are applied across everything finance does,
Yes.
and we identified 14 practice areas where these principles could be applied. And every one of these practice areas, whether it's external reporting or internal controls, we apply these principles, and they are applicable universally across all these 14 practice areas.
Yes.
So it's a very well documented and very well a structured document which
Agreed.
presents these principles. So that's around the business guidance. And business governance is really fundamentally about controls, compliance, and it's compliance to your internal policies, compliance to external regulations, put very broadly, managing all the stakeholders right up to your audit committee, managing relationships with the board, managing relationships with the CEO, managing relationships cross-functionally. Finance really sits at the intersection of all of these
Yes.
relationships. And so bringing a level of governance and trust and ethics to all of this is a part of that stewardship. So when you look at our role as finance professionals, both in business guidance and in business governance, it's fundamentally founded upon the principle of trust, ethics, and stewardship.
So Ash, one of the things when I looked at the document, and as you were going through the four principles, I have it pulled up here on one of my screens. It's early in the document. The stewardship grabbed me. All the other pieces are vital too. The information for decision making, how we protect the entity with governance and other things we do. These are themes that are prominent in how I talked about the CFO role in my book. But the stewardship is what first really captured my attention. And there's something like 30 references to it throughout the whole document. And I'm glad you pointed out the different practice areas, because I've used this as a diagnostic tool with some of the CFOs I coach. Let's look through your finance function at these different areas. What about tax? What about payables? What about receivables? Let's think through, how are we doing with all of these? How are we doing with the information? How are we doing with the insights we're generating? Are we acting as good stewards? The document brings those principles into very practical application. And one of the reasons I love that, if we're not careful, we can look at a term like stewardship and think just abstraction. Oh,
Right.
that's fluffy, that's nice to have, that's like culture, that's like employee morale. Yes, I believe that. But it's extremely practical, and it manifests at an operational level. And when we do it well, it involves trust, and it strengthens and deepens trust. And the GMAP spoke my language, and so I'm so glad you're here to help us unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely delighted to, and let's get into the weeds, as they say. But fundamentally, what we are positioning management accounting, management accountants, CFOs, leaders as the stewards across the business. We play that unique role. We are the financial fiduciaries. We protect. So when we think about value, there's value measurement. We are the independent source of truth in terms of measuring value accurately. There are three functions that sit across the entire organization and are at all these intersections I mentioned before. IT is in every part of the business. HR is in every part of the business. Finance is the third function, which touches every part of the business. The reason we hold the responsibility for the stewardship is because we translate everything into value and into financial measures. We are required to measure accurately, report accurately. We are also required as a part of our role to protect value, to defend
Yes.
value.
Yes.
And of course, we are also more and more required to participate in strategy, execution, and risk management to deliver value and to produce value. So if you think about the value chain across creating value, measuring the value that was created, protecting the value that is within the enterprise, the responsibility very clearly falls on finance, and which is why we have that unique role of the steward, and which is why we are required to be independent, required to be professional, required to be professionally qualified,
Yes.
and trained in these type of principles and the accounting standards and accounting rules, so that we can carry out our responsibilities with diligence.
So I'd like to key in on that independence concept for a minute, and also acknowledge that we're likely to have some listeners here who are not finance people, who aren't in management accounting. The principles are, just like the title in the GMAP says, globally applicable. They're applicable in every language, they're rooted in Christian realities. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. This does not belong to us. Everything ultimately belongs to somebody else. They are applicable everywhere. So those that aren't in finance, there's still some useful things you can pick up here, including getting some insights into how we finance people, accounting people think and need to think. Independence, though, as an accounting person, Often we think that's mainly for public accountants, especially those in the attest function doing the audits and the
Mhm.
reviews, required by the standards to be independent. But even management accountants, our independence reflects the reality that as a steward, and this is one of the key things about stewardship, the role's not about me. I'm here for the good of others, and that means I have to do hard things sometimes, including speaking financial truth, even when it's inconvenient, to the company, to the boss, to me, to others. And that independence where I'll let you elaborate here in a minute, but the fact that that is something even inside the company for the finance function, that's really significant.
I think the whole element of independence also generates trust.
Yes.
When you're dealing with stakeholders and when you're dealing with conflicting definitions of value, when you're dealing with conflict in value management in terms of there's a relationship to be managed, but there's also a risk to be managed. How do you balance the two? I think our position of independence also generates the trust between these stakeholders that they look to us for that independent view, and our independence actually allows us and gives us the ability and gives us that the label of being trusted. Um, Trust is absolutely critical when it comes to the position of a finance function, a finance leader. The organization looks
Yes.
at us, and looks to us for that independence. And so I think trust and independence are so interlinked and
Yes.
interrelated. You can
Yes.
only generate trust if you remain independent. The day you lose your independence is the day people will lose trust in you.
Yes.
So,
So I'm thinking of something that happens regularly to finance people, especially CFOs. We deliver news that's not good news about performance, maybe the company's performance. And that can be challenging. And we often face instances where we want to say, don't blame the messenger. I am the messenger. Now, first of all, my message had better be factual. So one of the things we are is we're the stewards of the financial truth about the organization. Now, it needs to be the truth. But one of the things that we have to do is bring that bad news because it's not about me. If I'm worried about getting my feelings hurt because the CEO is going to yell at me that the news is bad, I need to get over that. I'm the steward of the news. And then I also need to help the CEO understand misleading ourselves by pretending like it's other than the financial truth I'm bringing does not help anybody. We need information for decision making, not fanciful thinking, not best wishes. We need information.
yeah,
And sometimes that leads to some hard conversations.
right. And what that reminds me of is this whole thing about transparency. Um, Oftentimes you have to couch information, you have to couch your communication, you have to, but there are times when it has to be said as is,
Yes.
because people don't want to hear what is wrong, and transparency in saying, well, here is the range. This is the worst case scenario. This is perhaps the likely scenario, and here's a best case scenario. But what I'm presenting to you transparently is this could be the worst case scenario, and the decision then is jointly made.
Yes.
Otherwise, what you don't want, and we don't want to be in a position where we are not being transparent, and we end up carrying the consequences of that lack of transparency,
Yes.
where a wrong decision was made because we were not absolutely transparent, because we were fearful of presenting the downside, the bad
Yes.
news.
Yes.
And so that's something I've learned over the years, however hard it is. And you very clearly mentioned in your book, you're being called you stinking accountant. But why is that? It
Right.
is because we
Mhm.
bring that transparency,
Mhm.
and that is one of the reasons we might be stinking accountants, but we are trusted accountants.
Yes. So let me speak to that part of the title just for a moment, and then there are two things I want to add to what you just said. The stinking accountants gets attention. I had a CEO who called me that. All the years we worked together, I labored to get him to admit it was a term of endearment. He never would. Part of the reason I use it is not to belittle our role. As financial leaders, our role is significant. We are stewards. Even if people don't understand us or appreciate us, while we take our role very, very seriously, we don't have to take ourselves too seriously.
Right.
We can serve as very effective stewards, acknowledging that not everybody understands or appreciates, and still we can create value. So I'm thinking about your instance of I'm bringing news to the CEO of it could be this range of outcomes. One of the things that strikes me there is as a CFO, as a finance leader, I need to not just be bringing information, I need to be bringing information. If I'm in the C-suite, I need to be thinking strategically. I need to be thinking about how the information fits into our mission, our values, what's important to us, where are we heading. I need to bring fully fleshed out thinking that takes the numbers but doesn't stop with the numbers. That's part of me being a senior leader. The other thing too is it helps if I bring alternatives. If I just come and
Right.
say things are bad, I don't know what to do about it, I won't be the only one on the team that has good insights, but I need to bring some good insights on we can do this, we can do this, here are the pros and cons. I have a colleague who talked about it this way. He was a business owner. He said, don't just bring me a dead cat, bring a shovel too. Bring me the solution to deal with that dead
Right.
cat. I love
Right.
that. That's
Right.
very, very helpful.
Yeah. We often get branded as the CF no,
Yes.
because we are so we saying no so many times. But as things have moved on, you know, the dead cat and the shovel actually we're transitioning from the CF no to CF know how, and
Mm,
that's we know how to fix the problem. We
right.
know how to solve the business situation. We're saying no, but we also know how to. And I think that's a big transition where over the years, CPAs, finance leaders are having to move into strategy, into planning, into execution, and not just sitting in review. It's easy for the CFO in finance just to be the review function.
Right.
But one of the ways in which we presented these principles and encouraged the finance professionals is to move into the strategy, the planning, and the execution,
Yes.
and be involved in the business model, understand the underlying business model, be engaged with the purpose of the organization, so that when you are reviewing the results, it is after a thorough understanding of your strategy, your plan, your execution, and then the review. Just being reviewers is what auditors would do,
Yes.
because that's their job. But as a finance, as a part of the finance function, we need to get engaged with the strategy, planning, execution as well.
And that presumes we're also collaborating with other leaders. We're not acting in isolation. They
Correct.
need us. They need us for the information. We also work together. And so part of what I emphasize in the book, and the book's not technical, it's about leadership in a technical role. Part of what I emphasize is those collaborative relationships, you understanding strategy, you having the pieces that come together to help you have a fully orbed, developed leadership. I want to come back to the information, though, that we bring to the CEO. It presumes that we know what the facts are, that we actually have information that's useful. And so, one of the things that is quieter, less visible, is the infrastructure inside the finance shop all the systems and people and processes that deliver the information. If we don't have our house in order there, not perfection, but high quality, timely, understandable, we can't be good stewards if our house in our shop is not in order.
That is a fantastic starting point in terms of, yes, we want to be strategic. Yes, we want to be involved in business execution, business planning, etc. But the compliance, the accuracy of reporting, the controls working properly and adequately, we absolutely need to get these basics right. We will not be given a seat at the business table if we don't have the house in order. So that's I'm glad you mentioned that, Eric. I mean, that's foundational. We can't claim a seat at the table of decision making. We can't claim a seat at the table for strategy and being involved in the business purpose, execution, etc. if our own reporting not on time and not
Right.
accurate and not providing the information that the business requires, etc. So we've got to get
Yes.
all of that right.
It only takes a couple of instances of showing up with the board or the senior leadership team with erroneous data for you and your team to lose credibility, and people quit trusting the numbers. We can't be the voice of truth in the financial condition of the business if our numbers cannot be trusted.
Right.
Right.
And that is what do we call that? Just hygiene.
Right.
That's basic hygiene. We've got to get that right.
And it's so important. That's right. Accountants, brush your teeth, take your showers, comb your hair. Your numbers need to be good.
Exactly. When we look at the practice areas, obviously, corporate governance is an area where stewardship is paramount. You know, this is around maintaining control of the organization, around preventing penalties for a violation of regulation, whether it be tax or whether it be in the business area of business licensing. All of that sits very clearly in corporate governance. We should be monitoring the regulatory landscape, and that is becoming more and more complex. But we have to ensure that the organization approaches compliance with both the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So we have to be very, very on top of regulation and
Yes.
everything that's changing.
Yes.
So that is a core area of practice where we bring the governance and the stewardship to bear. And then there are all of the other areas like external reporting, internal analysis, and perhaps we'll get some time to talk about those specific practice areas in our next conversation. But just to make the point that in those two pillars, the business guidance and business governance, a key part of that governance is built around stewardship.
Yes.
It's built around trust and stewardship.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought up the standards, the principles, and they come in a variety of forms. We have regulatory, we have generally accepted accounting principles, national and international. They have tax codes in our various jurisdictions. In a large enough shop, the CFO may not be expert in all of them. The CFO may have experts over the various areas, internal and external, but there needs to be a general understanding of we don't make the rules. We understand and follow the rules, and sometimes we have to make interpretations. I had a boss I worked for once, and he said this in jest, but he said, "Isn't there a creative accounting way we can solve that?" Now, he did not mean, Eric, go cook the books. This is a person of integrity. I never doubted what he really meant here. But what he was saying essentially was, are you sure you understand the rules so there's not some aspect of the rules that bears on our situation that we've overlooked? That's appropriate. We need to, it's okay for the CEO and our peers to push on us, for the board to push on us and say, are you sure? You need to be sure. We and our teams have got to be sure. We need to know those rules and apply them.
Totally agree. Accounting standards must be applied, understood in the context of the business. We don't apply them blindly because there are interpretations and there
Yes.
are there are areas of ambiguity. There are areas where we exercise judgment. And in those ambiguous, uncertain, and areas that require judgment, again, everyone looks to finance to
Right.
provide the guidance, and the underlying principle of stewardship and trust and ethical behavior is paramount once again when we are applying accounting standards to business situations
That's right.
where the situations are ambiguous. And Eric, you and I both know the number of times that we would have had to come to these situations and make these calls that can be then defensible and justifiable and explainable and auditable.
Yes.
And all of these attributes help establish our stewardship.
Yes. I want to alert our listeners we are going to have another episode on a related topic. You won't want to miss that one too. But you brought up, Ash, that you might want to talk a little bit about financial reporting. Do you want to go ahead and spend a minute or two there before we sign off and go to a different topic?
Well, the whole aspect of financial reporting is around, again, we can come back to this, reporting both internal and external, internal reporting for decision making, external reporting for the purposes of attracting the right capital, attracting the right sources of funding, again, being transparent with shareholders, stakeholders, those that are providing credit to the organization,
Yes.
and our trust and our stewardship, again, at stake in this
Yes.
regard.
Yes. Well, Ash, as we wind up this part, so grateful for you taking time for it. Anything you want to say before we put this to a close and pivot over to another topic?
Great conversation, Eric. Looking forward to continuing this concept of the stewardship, the guardianship, and building trust, which is so lacking in
Yes.
this world. And as we move more and more towards AI and everything that AI is, the deep fakes and
Right.
all the issues around, do we trust AI? Do we not trust AI? The need for human trust
Yes.
continues to increase. And that is the currency that finance brings to the table. And that is why I believe that the finance professional, the CFO, the CPA, really has a massive demand as we go into this next world, into the world of AI and automation, and we can perhaps cover some of that in our next
Good.
conversation.
That's a good teaser for our next conversation. Also, let the listeners know in the show notes, I'll put a link where you can get to the Global Management Accounting Principles. I strongly encourage you, especially if you're a finance leader, if you're a CFO, go read those. Share them with your team. They are very, very practical. So, lots here for all of us as steward leaders to be thinking about, even if we're not in management accounting. Ash, thanks again for taking time for today's conversation.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Thanks for listening to Steward Leaders. If this conversation was helpful, you can find more episodes and additional resources at stewardleaderspodcast.com. Leadership is temporary. Stewardship is about forever.